Hi, this is Tyler Roicki here, and you're listening to ABC Agent Broker Conversations, where we talk all things real estate without a bias. And I'm here with my co-host, Jimmy Dulin. Let's get right into the conversation. Today, we're having a conversation about building a brokerage, even a team. I mean, I think either sense building a business beyond your own production in the terms of real estate. So, if anyone listening caught one of our earlier episodes, we went more into the background of myself and Jimmy. And Jimmy has quite the track record in real estate, especially on the brokerage, as I would put it, the brokerage building side of things. And so I guess my first thought to start off the conversation here is, who would you say, Jimmy, that building a brokerage is for? For those listeners, because I think a lot of people, if they want to be in the industry, I mean, I feel like someone who's active in sales and does well with it, maybe that's a natural next step. But like, what would you say on that? Like, who's it really for?
Well, so let me give you a couple of things. Number one, let me give you just a tiny bit of my background in terms of the brokerage side. I started with 30 agents in a single brokerage and built that up to 240 agents. Went from a $30 million company to just shy of $1 billion, and 242, I think, was at one single time the largest number of agents I had. But in terms of who is it for, and I did that, by the way, under the RE/MAX umbrella. So I was a franchise in Indiana, 14th largest in all of RE/MAX. Who's it for? I think it's actually, the traditional is I became a top agent through my sales practice. And once I got to the top of that, then the next mountain was I'll become the owner. And those are not necessarily always the best owners. Now, they certainly can be, right? I mean, it doesn't define that you can't be, or nor does it define that you can be your success as an agent. I think that the number one thing, and who this is truly for, is somebody who's more interested in helping others, and those others being agents, more so than they are interested in seeing their name in someone's front yard on a sign. I think that's the defining difference between who is most successful. I didn't compete with my agents. I didn't sell actively while my agents were selling. I managed, I led, and I trained. And so I think that's it's that personality that's, you're more interested in helping agents be successful than you are helping yourself sell more real estate, Tyler. That's my first kind of opinion.
That makes sense. I feel like, so if the thought there is to help agents, I feel like there's probably several different avenues to go about that, right? I mean, you have like coaches and trainers, you have, obviously teams, probably, I'm trying to think, I feel like teams probably a lot more common than, like, building and starting a team is probably a lot more common than doing so on the brokerage side. Maybe barrier entry is smaller, but like, what would you say the distinction is specifically, like going down the brokerage path, building a brokerage versus the other avenues that someone could help agents with?
Well, so it started with the coaching industry. All of these coaches, and I'm not picking on them, but when you start looking at all these coaching companies, the coaching companies took away, the broker owner relieved themselves of coaching responsibility and education responsibility and put it on the shoulders of coaches. Then the agents themselves went more aggressively towards their own lead generation and their own lead development. And so the leads no longer came from the broker's floor time and the broker company's reputation, et cetera. So the more things that a broker hands off to somebody else, the less likely they are to be successful. The broker that succeeds, to me, and is able to sustain and grow a business is the one who is doing the activities that an agent hired a broker for. When an agent aligns himself with a company, it is because they offer X, Y, or Z, whatever that value proposition is. And the minute that the broker starts setting those things aside and outsourcing them to these companies, then what's the value of the broker? Why am I paying the broker? And that's why these agents are questioning the cost and the fee structures with their brokers, because the broker's no longer doing all the things that the agent needs. It's now being outsourced. And many times it's not being outsourced by the broker, it's being outsourced by the agent. And the agent's not going to pay twice for the same service.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's something I see, like, and it seems like one of the things that really does vary a lot brokerage to brokerage is like, you know, kind of them pulling together resources. That's kind of a way I think of it. And I kind of get that reference point from one of the brokerages I was with at one point, being a local independent. The whole concept there was that they didn't offer a lot of extra stuff, like very minimal, if you could even say any extra stuff. But the idea was low fee structure with that. So they weren't having to go and find, you know, hey, who's doing the training, who's got these tools and resources. Whereas others, obviously, you charge more. You can go out and seek those things. But I think it seems like one of the ways that different brokerages are kind of trying to differentiate themselves is just how many resources they can pull together for the agents to kind of make it to where they don't have to seek out certain things, whether it be training, different tools, and instead, or even like in some cases, you know, advertising and just, you know, there's more of a simple solution versus being the real entrepreneur, I feel, and kind of figuring out how you're actually going to market and put yourself out there as an agent. Is that something like, so I guess you're saying it takes away from the value of a broker if they're just trying to pull together too many things and not really kind of bring their own value to the table?
So the broker needs to offer a few key things, right? They have to offer support to the agent. The agent's got to be able to have a person that they can go to, that they can get support from, that the broker can give that agent the support that they need. They need marketing, they need leads, they need coaching and training. That's if I want to be a successful broker today, I show up, I'm there and available to support the agents. And when the phone rings, I'm answering. I'm providing them a clear path to developing and growing their business, either if they're at 0 to getting started, if they're at a 30 million producer and they want to get to 50, but I'm the next step for them to grow that business. Marketing support. We provide that kind of customized experience that they need to support their brand and their marketing in conjunction with your brokerage brand and marketing. I mean, it's not coaching, marketing, support. I mean, you know, that's what I focused on when I was in that seat on the bus, if you will. When I was in the broker owner seat, that was my focus, was mentoring, coaching agents, agent attraction, growing my brokerage. Because if you're not growing, you're shrinking in brokerage, because agents retire, move, you know, divorces, all the various things that come through life. So, you know, it is, my roles were to train, educate. It was to retain and recruit. And it was to coach and mentor and provide direction, provide the path that the brokerage was going on, so that there was a reason for an agent to be on board with it. If there's no direction or no path, why do I want to be involved with you? What are you bringing to this table?
How do you even learn that as a broker, like someone who's getting to a point where they're building a brokerage? Because like for agents, obviously there's so much in the way of resources and trainers, coaches. Like, I mean, if you want to learn to be a top producer, I see every opportunity under the sun to learn it and ways to go about it. I don't really understand, like, okay, if someone wants to be a broker, what's the training for that, or how do you actually learn the ropes of that?
Wow, you know what, Tyler, honestly, you know, when we set out to do this podcast, we said we weren't going to be scripted and we weren't going to know what the other person was going to say in advance. And when you just asked me that, I realized that I've never ever thought of that. There's none that I'm aware of. I never experienced any kind of training. I mean, in my particular Remax network, we had corporate meetings and we had conventions and we had stuff like that where we could network, but it wasn't, it wasn't the down in the dirty stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis. So I can tell you how it happened for me, and I can tell you how I kind of fell into my routine and my rhythm. In 2008, I bought my partners out. And again, like I said, we had 32, 33, something like that, agents, 37, I don't know. And because it was March of 2008, and the world was going to hell in a handbasket, and the industry was struggling and suffering, and brokerages were going away, and agents were not selling real estate, and everybody was scared. What the number one thing that I found out, and I found this out by just calling agents and meeting them for a cup of coffee or having a conversation, what I kept hearing is that they wanted someone to believe in. They wanted someone to show them that there was a way to get through this horrible market and this bad. So it was leadership is what I took from all of my conversations. So that's exactly what I did. Is I began being the leader for the agents that were with my firm, but I also began acting as and conducting myself as a leader for agents that had nothing to do with my firm, in hopes that if they liked and appreciated that leadership, that it would attract them to join. And it worked. And so when I put my foot in the water, as the broker owner, I stepped right into conducting myself as a leader, giving them the faith and confidence that I could get them through this horrific marketplace.
Yeah, so got like someone to, basically you're the captain of the ship, and they're kind of looking to you for the vision and where we're going from this point. Like, so leadership's the biggest key factor I'm hearing up to this point.
That's what worked for me. It was establishing myself as a leader and somebody that they could trust and rely on. I gave them a reason to come into the office because we had training, we had coaching going on, and we were figuring out the ways. But it wasn't like I looked at this and said, oh, this burden solely falls on the shoulders of Jimmy Dulin. What I did was pull as many of my people together, and we began the conversations, and I included as many people as I could get to come from the outside, and by outside I mean not with my brokerage, to be a part of the conversation. And as we did that, we began to understand what people were doing, and this was working for Bill, and Julie was doing this, and Tiffany had this, and et cetera, et cetera. And as we began to share that information, I led them through the conversations of discovery and figuring out what was working and what wasn't working. And we were able to zig and zag, and we were able to make appropriate turns that led us to the next opportunity. But undeniably, I didn't have my head in the sand. And so many people had put their head in the sand and buried their head and were scared and confused. It's no different than 2024 and what's going on with buyer agency and all the changes. Like, you're either going to lead your people through it, or you're not, and you're going to rely on someone else. And when you begin to allow someone else to be the leader that your people look up to, then they eventually migrate to that leader. I mean, yeah. I've always heard people join a brokerage because of a person or of leadership, whether it's their broker, their team leader, etc. But I've always heard that people join for a person.
Yeah, that's the most common thing I've always seen too. Like with any whole spectrum of value propositions, but usually there's some connection to someone there.
Well, why did you join you've been with three brokerages now, an yep. Independent, KW, and now you're with EXP. So like, when you went to the independent or you went to KW, what was it that drew you there? What was it that kept you there?
Well, yeah, two of the three times it was definitely someone I met. The KW one was a little different because I was thinking of more than actual people I knew, because I knew 2 independent brokers, and then I kind of wanted to compare and contrast. And for me, I saw that there was a different value proposition. Like, and it's not really a fair comparison. I feel like if you're like a local independent where you might have like just yourself and maybe a handful of agents that are kind of all doing their own thing, and there's not really much beyond that. And like, so that was the situation with both independent. So it's not like they had a operation with a bunch of additional resources beyond themselves. And so I don't feel like that's a fair comparison with any big company out there, because then they're able to put resources together. But to me, that spoke to me, and I just saw kind of the value of having more resources beyond that one person to go to. And that's kind of why I went there. So I didn't know anyone at KW actually. But after that, the independent, it was a friend that connected me with him, and that sparked the whole conversation, and kind of built the connection from that point. And then with EXP, it was someone that I met as well, and kind of getting to know them better, that that ultimately transpired. So yeah, two of the 3 I would say were more so relationships that led to the opportunity.
So exactly what we're saying. It's typically, I mean, when I got my license at 91, 21 years old, I was at Century 21 for 6 months. And I went there because the guy who was there, the broker owner, his conversation with me was, he was going to teach me the ropes. I was going to be his prodigy. I'm going to help make you a superstar in the industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a person versus going to what were more corporate type interviews. So, it was a person that connected with me, that's what drew me in. And I think that's going to be the same for most people. But, ultimately, the one of the things that I always like to say when you're on the broker side, because look, you've got 2 hats. If we want to boil it all down, how you do these 2 things can be different between this broker A, broker B, broker C, etc. Retain and grow. Retain and attract, however you want to say it. Retain and attract. Those are the 2 things that a broker does. They retain by their methods of training, by their methods of coaching, leadership, et cetera, et cetera. And then attract is this. Lots of those same tools are the very tools that they use to attract. But at the end of the day, when you become a broker, you become more about the business of real estate and less about the sale and process of real estate. So you need to be more familiar with leadership skills. You need to be more familiar with asking questions and listening and drilling down. And obviously, it's a pretty selfless task. I'm going to tell you, it can have some rewards, certainly. I felt like in many respects I was well rewarded for what I did. In other respects, maybe not so much. I just recently had an agent who said that that didn't find any value in what a broker did, and I was like, wow, that one hurts a little when you've committed yourself and you've gone from sales where you made your money, your living, taking care of your family off of commissions, and you've gone to brokerage where you're essentially rewarded for retention and attraction. And retention, let's face it, is all about meeting the person and serving the person where they are and what they need, right? It's being the person who can get them the products or the services or the support that they need.
So how did you go about, beyond it? It sounds like there was opportunity for agents in the market area to learn and get in the room to get some of the value kind of ahead of time. And so I'd imagine some relationships were built that way. But how did you go about, I guess, what was your process for kind of building that? Because that's substantial growth. I think you said 30 million to $1 billion in volume, thereabouts, or something like that.
Yeah, from 2010 to 2014.
Wow. 5 years.
2010 to 2014, whatchamacallit, Real Trends said I was the 4th fastest growing company in the country.
So clearly, yeah, that's incredible growth for a 4-year time span. So like, what would clearly you had a process for this. So like, how did you go about finding agents that were a right fit to have that kind of growth?
So I was just the opposite. Instead of going about finding the agents that were the right fit, what I did was create a very succinct, very defined message of who we were as an organization. Our vision, our mission, our values, all of those things were embedded into the company. So there wasn't any question mark of who we are, what we stood for, or what we did. The culture of our company was led first. We led through culture. And as a result, my saying was always that if I got to talk them into joining the organization, then I'm going to have to talk them into staying. And so what I really wanted to do was attract those people by building the kind of company that they wanted to be associated with. So what I had to do is convey. That was probably the most difficult task. Building a company, treating people right, building an organization that is supportive of each other, that is the kind of place that other people want to be is one thing. Conveying that message out in a way that attracts people is another. With the organization that I was with, the agents weren't rewarded for bringing another agent in. So it was literally, that doesn't mean they didn't at times offer their assistance or introduce me to somebody, but they were not rewarded financially. The other side of that is we didn't take new agents. So every agent that we brought into the organization was seasoned. The only exception to that is if I had a manager who said they would take somebody under their wing, because I knew what we were good at and what we weren't good at, or what we had the tools and the infrastructure for and what we didn't have the tools and infrastructure. And we were built for high producers. That was the model that I had for my brokerage. And so that was our entire focus was around the people that fit the culture. And that culture identifies itself when you're holding events and when you're doing things and people are attending, then they're naturally attracted or they're naturally turned off. And whichever one they were, I'm completely acceptable to either of those. I can't make a round hole fit in a square peg. So the idea being is that let's invite the square pegs and the round pegs to the event, and the ones that fit, and the ones that don't. And can't have them all, can't do it all for everybody, but the ones that fit, we had a tremendous amount of loyalty and a tremendous amount of growth as a result of that.
Yeah, and so how many agents was that doing the $1 billion in production?
So at the time when we hit that number, we were at about 200, just shy of 250 agents. 2016 was my biggest year in the organization. So that was we're at 242, 243, somewhere right in there. I don't know the exact number that we hit. Obviously, you have some people that leave. So all told, it was probably we probably brought somewhere close to, I don't know, around 400 people through the organization. But we had the highest average production per agent in our local board of realtors. So, and that was because we didn't have zeros. We had no agents that were non-productive agents. We were taking on very few newbies. Again, those were only the ones that our managers believed in, took responsibility for, and personally held their hand and led them through the process. So most of the agents that were joining me, it was most common for me to get a $5 million to a $10 million agent join, and then we would help grow the 5 to a 10 or a 15 over a 3-5 year time period, whatever. And the 10 millions we grew so to 30 million, 40, even some $50 million producers. So that was really our sweet spot, and nobody else was nobody else really could touch that at the time. And we just became very well known for that. It didn't hurt that I had a good background as being one of the top agents in the city and was doing, $30+ million in production before I went into brokerage. So people respected what I had to say, but more importantly, I dove in and learned and learned and learned. And I went to all the conventions. I went to the fun ones. I went to the boring ones, and I brought back the information, and I became a conduit from everything real estate, whether it was Real Trends or Swanepoel or NAR or the REMAX events or whatever. I went to everything, traveled all around, and I brought that back, built relationships. And, those relationships led to people coming in and talking to my agents. So I got them in front of people that they didn't necessarily feel that they would have been able to do on their own. So I created value by leading.
So it sounds like the key ingredients, leadership, and it sounds like being an organizer of people and value from what you're describing, bringing people in who are the right people to teach and train and do those sorts of things. So being able to organize that, because someone has to do that, right? And that's probably one of the biggest things that falls on the broker's shoulders, is to actually have something of value for people to actually come to the office and get, right?
Absolutely. So Strength Finders, I'm sure you've probably done it. When I did Strength Finders, one of my strengths was, I don't remember the exact term, so pardon me for that. You may know them, but it was identifying what was different or unique or good about somebody else. It was my ability to meet you and say, oh, I could see that this is something that he would be good at or she would be good at. And that's one of my strengths. And so I was really out there all the time, meeting, talking to people, and understanding what was good about them and how they could expand their business, grow their business, or how I could help them do that. Because not everybody does business the same way. So it's not like I could sit down and I could say, okay, this is how we do it. I guess I could, but it wouldn't have been appealing that this is how we do it and everyone should do it that way. I had agents that did all of theirs through strong social networking, right? Built their business that way. And I had other agents. I had one lady that hand delivered, I don't know if it was 1,500, 2,000 flyers every single month. And then you've got other agents that it was social media, and others are buying leads, et cetera. So everybody had their source, but what they all needed was scripts. They needed to understand how to say and what to say. They needed to understand building with those relationships. They need to learn how to manage those relationships. So there are some universal things that everybody needs to know in this industry, but how an agent goes about it is uniquely theirs. So let's expand upon what's uniquely you and not make you, again, round hole, square peg, etc. Let's not make somebody fit into something they're not. Let's expand and elevate what their God-given talents are.
So you created a culture of production, and that it sounds like it was the dominant one in your local market. So thus it attracted those who were highly productive or really wanted bad to get to the spot where they were focusing upon what they did. And I guess that you ran the local hub for people of that mindset, right? So I'd imagine as people close deals, word probably gets out about that as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you see that this person's being recognized for their production and this person's being recognized, and then the common denominator is they're at this particular brokerage. Even within my brand, our agents were, higher agent productivity. Our office was receiving more awards. The brokerage itself was receiving the state awards and the broker owner of the year awards, and the agents were the top agents in the category. We had overwhelming presence in the top 100 teams, the top 100 agents, et cetera. Even though we may have only represented 20% of the agent population for the brand I was with, we represented 30-40% of the award recognition. So we were getting 2 for 1, if you will, and you do that by not creating an environment where you're squashed for your production, and you don't feel like there's but there's a path for you to grow. It's by creating a path for you to grow, but getting top producers to understand that they are going to grow more and accomplish more by helping others than by not. I mean, one of my favorite statements against a different company was, when you walk up to the photocopier, I can tell you in my brokerage, you're not going to walk up there and find a guy who just got his license yesterday and doesn't know what he's doing, making 500 flyers, and you're waiting. When you walk up to the photocopier in my office, you're going to be in line with another top producer, and you're going to have a conversation about what they're doing, what you're doing, and it's going to be productive. And that's so much better than walking into an office that's trying to be everything for everybody, including newbies all the way through the most experienced agents. So those were the kind of things that I found really meaningful, was creating a culture where everybody wanted to share. We had early on, we had a meeting and we were working on listing presentations. This was during, again, 2008, maybe 2009 or 10. And I asked everyone to show up at this meeting. Every agent was invited. Maybe then we had 30, 40, 50 maybe agents, I don't know. And everyone bring your listing presentation. And one agent said, "Oh no, I can't do that." He goes, my listing presentation is the best in the business." And I said, "For God's sakes, how can you say that?" "Oh, listen, I get every listing." And I said, "And you think it's the words on the paper, not the presentation, not the way you say it, not the empathy, the compassion, the energy, the salesmanship, not the knowledge, the experience. That's what sells. That's what makes your listing presentation so good, not what's on paper." Oh, no. He just couldn't. I said, "Look, bring it and share to the best of your ability everything you have, and then receive from everybody else in the room. And I guarantee you, you'll walk out of there and you will make more improvements to your listing presentation." And one woman gave him an idea that just blew his mind. But it was me getting him to the point where he was supporting the notion of sharing, as opposed to, it's abundance, as opposed to, pulling this back and saving it and keeping it proprietary. But anyway, one lady shared with him an idea that every time she goes on a listing appointment, she asks when if they're interviewing anybody else, and if they say yes, when, and what time and when and all that. When they indicate, "Hey, it's going to be tomorrow at 3:00, she goes back to the office. She sends a flower bouquet to arrive tomorrow at 3:30. So right in the middle of the listing appointment, the doorbell rings. The homeowner gets up from the quote unquote kitchen table, walks to the door, gets this beautiful flower bouquet, looks at the card, and it says, "Thank you thank you for the appointment yesterday. I enjoyed touring your lovely home, and I really hope I get the opportunity to work with you." And of course, when they walk back into the kitchen with it, what's the agent that's in the kitchen going to say? "Oh my God, those are beautiful. Who are those from?" "Oh, those are from Jimmy Dulin. I interviewed him yesterday."
Oh, that's epic.
I mean, it's that, like, is that not a mind-boggling, perfect thing to do?
Yeah.
So at that moment, we went to a local florist and we said, "Okay, can each agent put a credit card on file, and they can just simply call, and there's a standard message, call, give you an address, and you'll send the entry-level bouquet, $33, delivered to their door within a 25-mile radius." So boom, every agent went in there, gave their credit card on file, and they could just make a phone call. And every time they did a listing appointment, if the person said they were interviewing someone else, they sent a flower bouquet in the middle of that and disrupted the pattern of the other agent, who then, of course, acknowledged the beautiful flower bouquet and said, "Who sent it to you?" He would have never got that in an environment that wasn't built around sharing. If he had gone from a scarcity mindset and not abundance, then he would have never been prepared to put his information out and receive other people's information.
Yeah, so creating that environment, that's probably, I mean, would you say, building a culture very clear, like, that's a pivotal thing here, like for someone who's wanting to build a a brokerage. Like, is that, what do you say that's the most important thing, to really be clear on your values and what it is, the culture behind what you're building, and create that, for the people that resonate with it? Or what would you say is the most important element of building a brokerage?
I think it is 100%, because let's face it. I mean, when you think about it, Tyler, if you don't align with that, with that organization, you're not going to stay. I mean, if you walk in there every day and I don't want to use examples and offend anyone, but if you walk in every day and they're something, they're looking up and you're looking down, if you're not in alignment, why would you go there? You're going to find somewhere that you align with. And I don't think one place can align with every person, but I think every person could find a place where they can align and where it feels right and it fits. I mean, even as, like, I own franchises, right? So every major franchise, whether it's KW, Remax, Caldwell, C21, Better Homes and Gardens, any of these franchises, if you were going to buy one of those franchises, or if you were going to join a cloud-based EXP, Real, if you went to any of those to go build an organization, every one of those has a culture that you need to align with. If you're the leader and you're going to go align, if you're going to go be a part of one of those groups, every single one of those has a culture that you need to feel comfortable with in order to attract other people to be a part of it. If not, I don't see how you could be successful. I mean, if I'm not in alignment with that organization, whether it's a bricks and mortar traditional office, or it's a franchise, or it's a cloud-based, if that organization, I can't see myself and I can't align with them, then I can't add my value to that organization to help attract more people. And again, that's what you're there to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And that's awesome to hear, just, how big of it can become when you're clear on those values and who you're here for and who you're not here for. But what would you say? I would imagine within the brokerage, you probably had like teams. Was there anyone along the way that started a team within the brokerage? And like, I'd be curious to hear, like, how are you able to support with that? Because obviously, if someone's going down the team leadership path, I feel like that's, I mean, in some ways similar, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's it's also very different than running the whole brokerage, right?
So I found my role in that scenario as teach the team leader how to be a leader. So they knew the business. So what I found was my opportunity to add value to them and to their organization was helping them be the leader part of the team leader. So many of them were just excellent salespeople, and that's what they did. Some of them were excellent salespeople and excellent business people, and all kinds of varieties. But the most common thing that I could do was create environments where they could grow as leaders, and as a result of their leadership, then they could continue to grow their organization. I found team leaders were less concerned with me helping them sell more houses and more concerned with helping them develop into the people that they wanted to be for their organizations. Most of mine team leaders were really business owners who hadn't gone out and bought a franchise or gone out and started an independent company on their own. They were starting companies within my company. And so I acted in that way for them. I acted as the CEO that was helping them grow their companies, and so I brought people in, and I myself did things that helped them grow their organizations. And oftentimes, when I met with an agent who was interested in coming over to our organization, oftentimes I introduced them to my team leaders. If I had a team leader where I thought it would be a good fit, I always told our teams, if you need agents, let us know what you're looking for. And when we're out in the marketplace talking to people, because how we got to be highest productivity per agent was not having them do the things they didn't need to be doing. We had them focused on real estate, and we did the other things. So I took things off their plate and out of their way that took their eye off of the ball. If they sold real estate, the brokerage excelled. If they were over there making photocopies or over here trying to figure out this or trying to figure out that, they didn't sell. And we needed them to sell and be productive. So we eliminated those hurdles. And the beautiful part is that when you did that, the more they sold, the more they were recognized for their sales accomplishments. So I didn't get the recognition for that, they did, and that was a win for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I guess, Jimmy, what have we not talked about? I mean, obviously there's probably so many things, but, for someone listening who's maybe a productive agent and trying to figure out their path forward from here, especially if it's to build something, like what have we not talked about that might be important?
Well, geez, I don't know. We've covered quite a bit, but like I said in the very, very beginning, you've got to put, if you're going to be a leader, you have to be willing to put others in front of you. Your priority, you've got to use less I's and use a lot more we's, because we's are what help grow an organization, and we is what succeeds. Very, very seldom is it, if you're using the word I, is that going to lead to success for an organization or team leader, et cetera. So I think that it starts there. I think you have to have a clear path. You have to understand who you are, what you're good at, recognition of what you're not good at. I'm not the greatest at many, many things. So every single time we grew as an organization, I took the things off my plate that I was not that good at, and I focused on the 2 or 3 things that were best utilized my skills. And I think that is, and then I turned around and I taught that same kind of behavior to my people. Sharing, that open conversation, that open sharing is incredibly critical. And I guess the one thing we didn't talk about is because it was a part of our culture, because of my education as in culinary and being a chef by education, we broke a lot of bread in our organization and still continue to. So, but that's what works for us. So I would say find a way for your group to unite together in a culture that is both professional but also has some fun, and I think you two can be successful with that.
That's awesome. Well, some awesome insights. Stuff I feel like I'm learning in the process here. So I appreciate our conversation. I hope our listeners do as well. Any final thoughts for our listeners on, I guess, what they can do to engage or be more of a part of our conversation here in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're seeing this podcast, please feel free to make comments, share it with somebody else, recommend it to a friend, reach out to Tyler or myself. If you have ideas that you'd like us to discuss, we would be more than happy to hear your ideas. This is, we're just getting started, and I think right now Tyler and I have both enjoyed the process, and we continue to, we're going to continue to produce one of these a week with the idea of bringing real live stories without a bias, be from the real estate industry. So again, agent broker conversations, come be a part of the conversation, come share, come join, reach out to either of us, and continue to watch and like and follow, and we'll see you next week.